Hey guys, so I wanted to do a little report on this reporting by 404 Media, which is actually a relatively new media outlet that comes to everyone from many of the journalists that were with Motherboard at Vice Media, and they started a new website. So let's talk a little bit about this story they wrote about with your local police department using Fusus AI-enabled cameras. And they're not just using AI enabled cameras. They're actually making you pay for it. So the people who are giving access to Fusus to give live feed access to residential and business camera owners, they're actually giving up that access so they can have a live feed to local police departments. I don't see this heading anywhere good because really it's just centralizing the monitoring of people and biometrics. And in fact, it does have AI recognition in this system. So even if you think you have a doorbell camera that doesn't have facial recognition, at least in the pamphlet, well, if you're giving access to companies like Fusus, well, that live feed can actually be routed into an AI facial recognition system. So even if you think you bought a camera without AI facial recognition, it doesn't really matter because there's third-party companies, as I talked about in previous videos, that even if Ring doorbell, etc., says they're not doing facial recognition on everyone, they can still provide that camera feed to third parties. And I don't know if they have a partnership with this Fusus company, so I'm not claiming that at all. But I do want to bring it to light that this is happening, that live camera feeds, as it says, whether it's a drone, a traffic camera, a private cell phone video, or a building security camera, Fusus extracts the live video feed to send it to their intelligence center and officers in the field. So yeah, they have a full interactive map that you can check out if Fusus is being used on cameras in your area. So if you want to have that awareness, and it brings me back to my recent coverage of adversarial patterns and how you can wear different types of clothing and wear different types of hats and sunglasses, things like that, that can change the view by camera angle, that can distract the algorithms dependent on if it has been updated to defeat the adversarial patterning or not. So a lot of that is just clothing that can give a bit of a middle finger to these cameras, as the way I see it. Those types of clothing may not be foolproof. They're definitely not an invisibility cloak, but you can choose your fashion and attire to actually compete against this AI mass surveillance. Basic digital enslavement in the long term is how I see it. And that may be an extreme view, some might say, but you're giving centralized control to constant monitoring of everyone at all times. And governments don't always stay uncorrupted. And many times there's corruption in every single government across the world. And I don't know how people can be so naive to think that having this type of constant monitoring system is going to make you more free. People say freedom is dangerous, and that is just another saying. Freedom is dangerous. There's a lawyer I follow who says freedom is dangerous, deal with it. And I always really like that saying. But it's true. Do you want to be safe or do you want to be free? But the truth is they can't make you safe anyway, so you might as well be free. So 404 Media obtained this data from a researcher who actually found it quite disturbing that they're able to get this live feed anytime. In fact, they used the API for Fusus, and they had to require the customer's subdomain, which in this case was, for example, City of Miami PD, that stands for the Miami Police Department. So they would be able to access these live feeds on the cameras of businesses and residents just by having that API access, and of course then can be routed into other things that allow them to, basically do identification through biometrics. As the Electronic Frontier Foundation put it, that this data set is the most detailed record of Fusus integrated cameras that they've ever seen. It makes it clear that these systems are using hundreds of thousands of public and private cameras to blanket huge swaths of our cities, particularly in the Southeast USA, with capacity for constant surveillance. And so when you have this level of camera monitoring, you can track someone from the moment they step out of their home to the moment they get in their car. That car can be tracked at every single stop. They can track how much gas you're using. They can track various other things. Once they know where you are, they can then track your devices with you as well, and that could be integrated with different types of advertising, data broker tracking as well. So the data includes several different fields for each agency. They have registered cameras, and those are those that are from individual residents or business owners that have informed law enforcement about them. And so if an incident does happen, the investigators are able to then reach out and ask for the footage. So if you report that you have the camera, of course, if you're using a big company like, Ring or one of the other Google, you'll likely get a visit if anything happens in the area, and they'll ask for your footage. Now, integrated cameras are the very next step, which is where residents give law enforcement the direct access to the feed, so the live feed, and this is how a Fusus-owned documentation phrases it. So the integration that Fusus wants to do is going to require them to install another backdoor piece of hardware into your camera system. That they want to add this AI capability hardware to allow you to become a monitoring place, a side step for the police to be able to monitor those in your area. And so they want to basically have you install their backdoor piece of hardware for AI capabilities. So as you can tell, I'm really not a fan of this kind of thing. I think it's way too dangerous to have all of the cameras in the world all integrated into a centralized control system through companies like Fusus. So I really, Fusus, when I hear Fusus, I think of, well, is this some kind of front for the fusion centers of intelligence? Are they creating companies? I really wouldn't know, but we are seeing massive privatization, and that's the thing about privatization. It becomes secretive. So when you allow companies to control things like your government, you actually are giving up transparency. For example, in the US, you're not even able to do Freedom of Information Acts if a corporation is running some part of your government agency. So when you hear all of these politicians that are in the hands and pockets of billionaires, when you hear them say we need to privatize X or we need to privatize Y, what they don't tell you is that makes profit the number one priority. For shareholders to make their money, they need to put profit first, and that means cutting services. That also means a lack of transparency. So I do see all of this privatization. The public-private partnership is just a front for fascism, and that's how I see it. So guys, hope you got this and thought it was interesting. I'll leave a link to the article. It's by Joseph Cox. And make sure to subscribe, leave a comment if you have one, and I look forward to speaking with you soon in the next video, and I'll be back later with more on how to protect your security and privacy.